You know what, like I can do bigger things, and I can build products. And that's when I decided to again quit and build my own.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into D Industry. In today's episode, we have a very special guest with us. Hi, Sindhu. Welcome to D Industry.
Hello. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, how was your day so far, Sindhu?
It's been pretty relaxing. We have the holidays here in the US, so it's been pretty chill in terms of work. I've still been working here and there, but everything's been pretty calm and slow. Weather's been pleasant, so it's good.
That's wonderful, Sindhu. So, if you could give a brief about yourself to our viewers out there.
Yeah, happy to. So I'm Sindhu. I am currently a designer at Roku. Before that, I worked at Amazon. I also built my own startups and stuff like that. So it's definitely been an interesting ride. So I moved into design from engineering. So I'm from India. And everybody is kind of pushed into engineering, right? So I got pushed into engineering, and I worked as an engineer for about 3.5 years, which was when I figured, my true passion is in design. So went back to school and then did a hard switch to design, and have been a designer since for about 6 to 7 years, and I've really been loving it so far.
That's wonderful, Sindhu. So wanted to deep dive into this journey. And if you could just walk us through your journey, like how did you switch from engineering to going to masters for US, and how did you landed up being a designer there?
Yeah. So my journey was pretty interesting because, I did not have any plans of going to the US or landing in the US at all. So my whole goal when I was back in India, doing my, bachelor's of engineering was, okay, I'm going to get a job at Infosys, and I'm going to just write it out there and just settle down with my family. That was my whole thing. And when I went into Infosys was when I realized, I wanted to work in a product company. Infosys is a great environment if you're interested in consulting based stuff, but I wanted to work and build products. And, it was very hard for me at that time. So I'm talking 2010. So it was very hard at that time for me to find product-based companies back in India. And I was like, okay, where is the action happening? And that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to move to the US. And the best way to move to the US is to actually do your master's so that, you can get yourself acclimated, you get that time to learn. And then you also have a visa to make sure that you land in your first job and can keep your first job. So that's how I ended up. I wrote my GRE in a month, and then I went to UT Dallas because I had 4 or 5 admits, but Dallas weather seemed to be most comparable to India. So I kind of moved here, and then it was the US was just coming out of a recession at that time. So job opportunities were pretty scarce. But, I landed a gig at BlackBerry when they were basically trying to turn over the company from, the touch-based devices, the keyboard-based devices to the touch-based devices. So that was a very interesting time. And that's kind of when, I started to work on the front-end stuff and really the experience building part of it. And that was my foray into design. So after that, after spending my time at BlackBerry was when, I was working on all of this UI stuff and design things. And I had all these ideas. Design as a profession back then was actually just graphic design. So we just had graphic designers who were focused on making things pretty. And here I was giving them all these ideas and suggestions. And they were like, well, I don't know, just build what you want, I guess. And that's kind of when, I started to get more and more embedded with their teams, giving them ideas, always being this dev who was very interested in how things will look and feel and stuff like that. And then I decided to kind of take a cold, hard look at what I was doing, right? Because as an engineer, you're supposed to really be focused on making the code better, making the product run faster and stuff like that. And here I was obsessing about completely different things. So that's when I decided, okay, you know what? If I want to do this, I'm just going to do this right. So I quit my job and I went back to school at the University of Washington to do my master's in HCDV. So it was a very scary move because I had my student loans. I had everything that came with, moving from a different country and earning in a different industry and all of those things. But it was worth it because, it really helped me give that time. It gave me that 2 years again that I needed to immerse myself in design and learn the basics. And then, I made a lot of friends, built a design network within Seattle, and ended up at Amazon. So it was a very, very interesting journey from that side. And after I worked at Amazon again, I had that same fatigue of like, okay, I wanted to land in this company, and this Amazon was always my dream company. And I built some great products there, and I built a lot of confidence in myself as a consequence. And I was like, okay, you know what? Like I can do bigger things, and I can build products. And that's when I decided to again quit and build my own startup because I hadn't a background in engineering, so I could write code, and then I also knew design. So I built this event planning company called Zaya, and grew it to about 2,000 to 3,000 users. And then the pandemic hit. So that took a nosedive. And then I went back to still being in the startup world because I was very enthralled by that. I worked at a startup studio called Pioneer Square Labs, and tried to build companies and incubate companies in that studio. And then was when the Roku opportunity came through, and it was very interesting. So I jumped at. So it's been a fun journey so far.
Thank you so much, Sindhu. It's really an inspiring and wonderful journey. Like you have taken different roles at different times. You have visited again the college days back to back whenever you felt like you should go and revisit. So wanted to know, what are your 5 major learnings out of all this journey that you can give to the new beginner out there?
Yeah. So I guess coming from India, right? Like there is a default career or a path that's usually chosen for you by parents that really care about you and want you to succeed. So one thing is just to be authentic. The first thing would be just to be really authentic to what you want and what you want out of life, what you want out of your career, and what you're really passionate about, and be true to yourself, right? Like the moment that happens and the moment you're able to stand up for your belief, then it becomes easier, or it becomes a process of convincing others to trust in you, which was kind of the journey that I did when I had to convince my parents to send me to master's, taking such a big loan, which they had not planned for. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is to, as you're authentic, also to be very passionate. So it's what has really helped me to move across these career paths seamlessly is the fact that I was really passionate about something. So when I was able to, think or come at it from this notion of passion, it really made the hours not matter. It made work-life balance not matter and all those things. It was about how can I learn, and how can I learn that fast enough? And then the next thing would obviously be to connect with as many people as possible, learn from as many people as possible, reach out, make cold calls, and just put yourself out there, right? Some people might respond and others might just walk away. The worst that can happen is people will walk away, and that's fine, right? You put yourself out there, and I feel I've gotten a lot of roles, opportunities, and great connections where I've been able to give and take as a result of that. And the other two would be about just keep learning, right? Become a learning machine, and don't really focus on, oh, this is my specialization and this is what I'm going to learn. Instead, just pick something outside and just have fun in the process of learning, and get more curious, and just follow things from a notion of curiosity, then thinking, how is this going to help me get into my next job or my next role or something like that. Last would be just to learn, and when as you're learning, right, you're gonna notice that things are really becoming hard, and to persist at that point. When you're learning, it's there's this threshold when oh, I'm getting good, and then you're oh my god, I'm such a stupid, and that's usually when we kind of drop off. It's to go past that hump, and that's when passion and everything else not bothering about the hours and all that comes into play, I guess. So those would be my kind of learnings.
Thank you so much, Sindhu, for sharing those wonderful words of wisdom with us. So we have a lot of international students watching our videos on this YouTube channel. So what would be your advice for anyone who wants to join Amazon as a designer?
Yeah. So joining a bigger, first off, Amazon, one thing to tell you is like a big company or a FANG or a man now doesn't necessarily suit everybody, right? Like, so again, like it's to be authentic to yourself and see what you want from joining a company like Amazon or Facebook or Meta or whatever. So, and what I mean by that, and why I say that is because, when you're a beginner, some people might be enthralled or interested in just learning from others and learning how systems work and understanding constraints and operating as a result of that. And that's where, those people fit well in these bigger companies, right? And that's where I was, because I thought I'm a complete noob. I don't know anything about design. So I'm going to learn from the best designers in the industry. And that's why I went into Amazon. On the other side of the spectrum, there might be some people who are really confident, right? Like they are pretty confident about their skills. They have a strong perspective on what they think that they want to do, which is build products fast. And when you join a bigger company, it becomes harder to do that fast. You're learning, but you're learning more by absorption than by actually doing the work, because it's hard to get a big chunk of work at a bigger company as a new person. So it's really for sussing out whether Amazon or a company like that is really the right place for you. And if you do say that, do end up answering the question as yes, it is the right place for me, I want to join this place, then it would be about what are these companies actually looking for in a young designer, right? And one thing that I've interviewed hundreds of people at Amazon. And one thing that I wanted to really nail down is that you cannot really build yourself to land a job at Amazon, because every team's needs are different. Every hiring manager is looking for something very specific. And if you end up being there in the right place in the right time by luck, you get the role. If not, you just don't. And, if you were passed up in an interview, especially at Amazon, right? Like at Facebook and Google, I know that, they kind of do this broader form of interview where they interview for the company and then different hiring managers get to pick based on their needs. But at Amazon, that's not the case. So it's also being aware of which company operates which way and how you cannot really mold yourself to get that specific role. So what does that mean, right? It's very scary when there's no rule book. It really means that, at the end of the day, it's about building a portfolio or building your work in such a way that you really like it, right? Like building projects, and this is really about finding your expertise, right? Like whether it's visual design, interaction design, or what have you, finding that, building projects based off of that, and really nailing down that specific discipline and going deeper in it, having this broader overview of skills that will kind of show curiosity, but you're not really an expert in, but you're able to say I'm an expert in this specific thing. And then just telling a good story around that and putting yourself out there again and seeing who wants to pick you and having a good attitude about it, asking for feedback, soliciting feedback, talking to people and being engaging, I guess would be my key pointers.
Thank you so much, Sindhu. That's really wonderful. So we get this question a lot of times from our viewers out there, is there a way that without a design degree also you can get into bigger companies or you can work internationally? So what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so it's going to become a little harder, especially in the US, to work without a specific degree internationally, right? Because the way the immigration system works, they need you to have a case. The employer needs to make a case for you to have this job. And that means that you have to have an expertise in that job. And, that's either design or computer science or what have you. Right? So it can be a little harder to come from the outside, especially within the US, and do that. So you might be constrained by degrees here, but I know countries that are definitely not the case like that, right? And that's definitely not the case to do the job. I can promise you a lot of the talented designers that I've seen have come from so many interesting disciplines that I was like, oh my God, this is what makes design so special, because most computer engineers or computer science developers usually have engineering degree. Whereas in this side, you just see so many people that are mavericks and they end up in design just based on pure passion, right? They've learned the skill, and each of them have a unique set of expertise. So from the job perspective, it's definitely not the case. You don't need the degree to do the job. But from like a visa, logistics, and all that perspective, yeah, you might be constrained by that. And, I really hope our immigration system's a little better here, because we're really missing out on some very talented folks.
So wanted to understand, like, how does one can craft their skills without getting in a state of burnout? Because we oftentimes hear like people go into creative block while they're trying to hustle or get things done. So what's your take on that?
Yeah. So in terms of like honing your skills, right? Again, like come at it from the perspective of what really keeps you very enthralled and engaged, and pick that discipline, because like the first thing is about finding that and keep looking and keep changing because first I thought I was passionate in user research, and I was like, I'm going to be a user researcher. And then, I tried to do the job. I tried to like freelance in a few places. I tried to talk to researchers who would come by to my campus and ask them what their day job is like. And they were like, well, you contribute these insights, you give inputs, and, you influence the product. And I was like, that's too hands off for me. Right? Like, I love the fact that they're thinking a higher level, but I'm more of an executionist, and I want something where I can get to the ground floor and get my hands dirty. So it's about like, and then that's when I decided to pivot, right? At that point, I was like, oh my God, it's so hard to find a job as a researcher. It's so hard to like learn these concepts. There's just so much to do. And that's primarily because I was like trying to chase something that I was not super passionate about or didn't have too much information about. And then, when I got to know, oh, that's not the case. There's all of these things that's there. And, that doesn't really keep me enthralled in my day by day pursuit. So I'm going to change disciplines. And when I changed into design, things were hard, but they were hard in a different way, in the sense that, like a lot of times I would start picking something up and then I would go into this rabbit hole of, oh my God, there's just so much to learn. Visual design, there's just so much to learn. Logo iconography, there's just so much to learn. Then again, it becomes this prioritization exercise of what really makes me happy. Again, then it was interaction design. I went to engineering school. I really like logic. I'm a logical person. I love breaking down problems systematically. So interaction design will be my core skill set that I will spend the most of my time in, honing and getting, and learning in that specific area became very easy. It was very easy for me to pick up and grasp items in that specific discipline of interaction design. And with that expertise and that confidence, I was able to branch out, right? Like, people started valuing me as a designer because I was so good at this specific field. And then they were like, okay, you know what? I'm here to teach you about visual design. I'm here to teach you how to harmonize things. And I learned that from other designers that I worked with. I would say, hey, I have this big interaction design problem that I've solved. I need your help, or I need your eagle eyes to help me polish this. And they would help me in exchange of favors that I would return in bringing my expertise in interaction design. So I guess at a higher level, it's about picking one area, getting really good at it, and using that confidence to reach out and help people who are facing problems in that area, and learning from them about other ancillary areas that you want to grow in. And also accept the fact that, it's going to take time, right? It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. You're going to produce very bad work. And just as long as you're moving and producing work, that's all that matters. If I look back at my portfolio that I built last week, I'm going to feel like I'm an idiot today, right? That's a good thing, because, you're growing, and that shows that, you know better from that week, but you did your best work at that point. So it's also acceptance and being at peace, and building yourself up and tearing yourself down and saying, I can't do much.
Thank you so much, Sindhu. So we'll wrap up the show now by any 3 favorite books that you want to recommend, and also any podcasts and books. It can be a mix of anything.
Yeah, I really liked What's in It for You? That's a book that I've just started reading. I think it's by Josh Polish, and that book really talks about the perspective of putting the other person's wants and needs before yours and going at it from this perspective of helping them. And then, like things will shake out for you, whichever way you want. That would be my like top recommendation for 2023. And, if you're into like biographies and stuff like that, Shoe Dog, the Nike story, my goodness, it's such an amazing read. In terms of podcasts, I obviously love all of the design podcasts and plug to your own, Nodes of Design, which I've heard, and continue to hear it. I think like you did bring some amazing designers back in the day. And, I hope that work continues. And I think Design Details is a good one. Brian Lovin. I don't know if that used to be my like go-to a while ago. Nowadays, I'm into like the startup-y podcasts, so the All In Pod. If you've not heard it, those guys are a hoot. Definitely like shout out to them, and would recommend reading that or hearing that if you're interested in like all things outside design, like startups, economy. They rant about all the fun stuff, which is very fun to listen to.
Thank you so much, Sindhu, for joining us today. And we are looking forward to host you again in our upcoming episodes. And viewers, if you have liked this video, please like, share, subscribe. And also feel free to reach out to Sindhu for any design or career advice that you want. Thanks for your time again, Sindhu.
Yeah, I definitely want to like double down on that part. Like, feel free to reach out to me. I do send out a newsletter. So I'm really, the reason I started the newsletter was to kind of do like this mentorship at scale. And the goal is if you have some burning questions, just send it to me in LinkedIn. There have been so many people that have sent those to me, these questions in LinkedIn, and think that they just go like out in a black box. But I make sure that I spend time and write it out. And you might be surprised how many people want to know the answers to that. So reach out to me, please, LinkedIn, whichever way is convenient to you. I'm happy to respond, happy to be a resource.